Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Today is the day that God has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. From Philippians 4. Good morning. Welcome to Easter. It is Easter today. Happy Easter. Thank you for joining us. I see we have several people in on this live stream. I'm still learning the technology. I'm very grateful to be with you. My name is Bob Janice Dillon, and I'm very privileged to serve as minister of Cairo Street Chapel in Warrington, Park Lane Chapel in Ashton and Makerfield, and Matthew Henry Chapel in Chester. And, greetings to folks from all those chapels. I miss you, love you. I'm glad we can be together in this way, even if we can't be together as we often are. And a special welcome to any visitors. If you're not affiliated with any of those chapels, you are very, very welcome here. I'm very glad to have you for the celebration of Easter. Now, what we'll be doing here today is a little different than its ordinary service. We will have a couple of hymns because we like to sing. Unfortunately, it'll just be me singing on your screen, so I hope you'll try and sing loud. Even if you don't know the lyrics, just hum, because I'm not a great singer or a great guitarist. But we will have a couple of hymns. However, it won't be sort of a standard service in many ways, because what I'd like to do for this Easter service, since we have it a bit different, is to kind of go through the Holy Week message. What happens? The Holy Week is a term for Jesus' last week when he comes to Jerusalem, and there are some when he faces the greatest suffering and challenges that any of us can face, and many of us are facing challenging times, aren't we? And then close with Easter and resurrection and hope. Now, I know sometimes on an Easter service, we do just the resurrection and hope. So I know it may be uncomfortable to go through the difficult bits. However, I know we haven't been gathering in the chapels each week, and I think it's kind of important to say a little bit about the whole journey so that we can all sort of experience Easter. It's really that experience of hope. So we'll go a little bit through the valley of the shadow, but we'll end up in hope. If any children are watching, you're very welcome to watch. It's sort of up to mom and dad, but I'm not going to go into any, there's nothing graphic about it. I will kind of talk about what happened, or what the story says happened, but not in any great detail, but kind of talk about difficult times and challenging times, as well as life abundant and hope. So you're very welcome to join us. I have some bread. Actually, it's matzah, which we can. There's a lot of debate about whether it was leavened or unleavened bread on the various four gospels, but leave that aside. It's because matzah is what I have in the house, and hopefully we'll be having a Seder in my family this week. And wine, or in my case, it's Vimto. I do like a glass of wine, but I'm going with Vimto today. I like a glass of Vimto too. So you're welcome. If you want to get some bread or wine or something to eat and drink right now, if you have anything to hand, it doesn't have to be bread and wine. You don't have to do it either. It's more it's symbolic. It's not an actual communion because it's not quite the same as. But we're going to, as we talk through the story, that'll be one of the elements as we talk through the week of Holy Week. Speaking of the story, I know in our Unitarian tradition, we welcome doubt and skepticism as well as faith and commitment. And all of these are part of our kind of story together collectively. And in any one of our congregations, we have numerous theological understandings from Christian, and we come out of the Christian tradition from Unitarian, to Jewish, to Buddhist, from very God-centered to humanist, to many different understandings. So when it comes to the story of Easter, there's lots of different questions about how literal it is and all of that. How much do the four Gospels agree? I won't be going into the details, but I just want to say if you're skeptical, your skepticism is welcome here. This is not a place that says you have to enter here only if you fit the criteria. This is for all. And by the same token, if you are, if Jesus is the center of your life, you are welcome here. And I know for some, the Unitarian approach may be a difficult one because we are a little more, we can be more tolerant of understandings. I guess it's a nice way to put it, or there are less nice ways to put it. But I do welcome those who, for whom genuinely this is a very important day, as it is for me, as well as those who feel that sense of spring and happiness and maybe don't have the religious language for it, but want to celebrate. And we're all here together. I think that's really special that we're here together to celebrate that. So I'd like to begin with a reading, and I'm grateful for the readings. I'll be using some Bible readings from the Message, which is Eugene Peterson's translation with permission from the publisher up to a certain number of verses. So we're grateful for that permission. And some texts from Unitarian ministers. And this first one is from a minister who's also a friend of mine, the Reverend Celia Midgley. And this is, I think, kind of an Easter reading. It says, I will go into the garden and say my prayers. And for some of us, if we're lucky enough to go out to the garden, that's about as far as we get these days. So it's such a poignant reading. This is from Reflections on Growth and Change, which was gathered by Celia, Green and Dying. But this is called, I will go into the garden and say my prayers. And we'll light our chalice with these words, which is a symbol, the light of truth and the warmth of love. I will go into the garden and say my prayers. On my knees, I will take the trowel to the soil and give thanks for each yielding dew-wet weed, each opening flower, each slender, trusting blade. What is this impulse when the sun is warming to dig and pull in the moist underneath? What, when the blackbird sings in the twilight rain, is the force that bends my willing back for more? And when God drew Eden from the water, seeing first perhaps a likeness smiling up, did the great artist thrill with restless power to shape what others would forever paint? Forget-me-not and button feverfew, feathered herb Robert and bindweed winding close, a poignant stand of passing tidy tulips, or perfect rose, or prize chrysanthemum. These modest offerings from our hands tell their own glory, which we must help reveal, marking our place among all that lives and gives back an epitaph of praise and co-creation. I will go into the garden and say my prayers, by Celia Midgley. So we're going to try a hymn here, and I know you can't see the lyrics up there, but we tested it, and thank you, Jane, for the help. And it can't really hear the music. Rather, you hear the music. So this is Jesus Christ is Risen Today, which is 268 in the Gray hymnal. You may know the lyrics. It's by Charles Wesley, Gray hymn writer, and the tune may be familiar. The lyrics are different versions, so I may sing lyrics that you don't know. The Alleluias, I hope you catch on to. So sing the Alleluias if you can't. This is a very traditional hymn. We'll sing a less traditional hymn at the end, but this one is called Celebration. Jesus Christ is risen today. Jesus Christ is risen today. Alleluia. Earth and heaven in chorus say, Alleluia. Raise your joys and triumphs high. Alleluia. Sing ye heavens and earth reply. Alleluia. Love's redeeming work is done. Alleluia. Fought the fight, the Christ has opened paradise. Hallelujah. Hearts are strong and voices sing. Hallelujah. Where, O death, is now thy sting? Hallelujah. As he died his truth to save. Hallelujah. Where thy victory, O great. Hallelujah. For we now where Christ has led. Hallelujah. Living out the words he said. Hallelujah. Made like him we rise. Hallelujah. Ours the cross, the grave, the skies. Hallelujah. Amen. I hope you got a chance to sing along the Hallelujahs. You weren't forced to listen to me too closely. As they say in Park Lane, when I sing, it's a case of don't give up your day job. So I'd like to tell a little bit of the story of Holy Week now, and I'll tell it briefly. Some of you on my Facebook page, I told it from the point of view of the Gospel of Mark, and this one is told from more the point of view of the Gospel of John. But I'd like to tell just a little bit as we journey up to Easter, and then we'll get to where Easter is. So at the beginning of the Gospel of John, at the beginning of Easter week, Easter comes in what time is called Palm Sunday. And we had Palm Sunday last Sunday. But what is Palm Sunday about? Well, Palm Sunday refers to the palms. This is not a palm tree. But in Mark, it says the branches of the trees. So it could have even been an ordinary branch. And they placed on the ground. And they placed their coats on the ground. And why did they do this? They did this to welcome somebody, a hope. These were not rich people. They put on the ground what they had, their own coats, the branches off the trees, and they placed them there to welcome him. And who was this that they welcomed? They welcomed this Prince of Peace, this messenger of a new way in the world. And these were people who desperately needed a new way. They felt the brunt of the Roman Empire. They felt that dreams were deferred, or maybe never to come at all. Maybe they dared to dream. And so this dreamer, this miracle worker, this healer came into Jerusalem, and he was welcomed with shouts and cheering. But not all welcomed him, because change is threatening. And for many of the powers that be in Jerusalem, especially those connected with the Roman side of things, there was a fear to him. And so they weren't sure what he was up to. And as the week progressed, they saw that he overturned the little coin where they did they had sort of a bureau de change in the front of the temple where you could get your coins to give them to the temple authorities. Of course, we all rely on donations, don't we? So we can understand that from a ecclesiastical point of view. But Jesus overturned those temples and said, "You will not make my house a den of robbers," in the words of the Old Testament. And he preached about a new world, some sort of new world, this kingdom of heaven that can arise from something as small as a mustard seed, a tiny seed within us. And this new world can upend the whole world, can make the last be first. And where those who rule are the servants and not the masters. And what on earth did all this mean? Well, nobody quite knew, but there was concern about him. And where there was concern, as everybody was gathering for Passover here in Jerusalem, the authorities were trying to find a way to. I can smell that too, right? It's it was lucky. That was our flowers. That was the concern. There was foreboding. They were starting to burn a little bit. See, I hadn't planned all this. So there was that time of concern, and in the midst of this comes Jesus had a meal. Now, whether this was a Passover Seder or not depends on which interpretation you read and which gospel you read of which interpretation. But there at that Seder, they shared bread and they shared wine. So I'd like to invite you, if you have anything at hand, and if not, you can do it imaginary, but if you have any bread or whatever you have, we're going to share it together. Glass of wine if you're able, or Vimto. That's what I have, or water. Jesus did not ask for any particular special ingredients. This was not what it was about. He used what was there. That's why it's bread and wine, is because that's what you have, especially at Seder, but at any meal, really. And so Jesus, at that special time, held up this bread, already so symbolic in the Jewish tradition, and he said that this is my body, said Jesus, broken for you. And he said, we're all connected by this body. We all have this. So I invite you, if you wish, to break off a piece, and symbolically, piece is for you if you don't have a piece at home. And together, we'll partake of this mystery, and it is a mystery, and the sense that we're all connected. This is the body of Christ, and in some way, it connects all of us. And we're all connected on this earth. We're all made up of the same stuff, right? Atoms and molecules. And we're all connected in a strange way. We all betray each other. We all lift each other up in love. So Jesus said, this is my body. And if you have anything at hand to drink, we all rely on drink to live. Probably not wine, but some sort of drink. And wine, of course, is a special celebratory thing. And this is a celebratory day on Easter, but the Maundy Thursday was also a celebratory day, even though it came before what Jesus knew and said was going to be the most difficult of times. And he lifted up his glass and he said, this is my blood. This is my covenantal blood. He was speaking from the Jewish tradition that we share something. It's where we have a covenant, we have a bond together. We're connected by blood, just as brothers and sisters and brethren are all connected. As brethren, we're all connected by blood, whether or not we're literally related, and of course we're all related in some sense, but metaphorically, even more than that, we're all brethren, siblings to one another. So Jesus said, this is my blood sprinkled on the masses, shared between everyone. And even today, 2,000 years later, a toast, we share that sense that the blood that reunites us all, as we say from the Jewish tradition, l'chaim, to life. We had this meal, which we're still talking about all this time, this sacred meal, and they shared bread and wine, and he said someone would betray him. Everyone wondered who it would be. And at the very end of the meal, this is in the Gospel of John, it's not in all the Gospels, but I like to lift it up here. It says, Jesus got up from the supper table, set aside his robe, and put on an apron. Can you imagine? Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the feet of the disciples, drying them with his apron. When he got to Simon Peter, Peter said, Master, you wash my feet. And Peter protested, but Jesus said, you have seen how I serve you. Do you understand what I've done to you? You address me as teacher and master, and rightly so. That is what I am. So if I, the master and teacher, washed your feet, you must now wash each other's feet. Obviously, we're not going to do this. We're certainly not going to do this from social distancing 6 feet away. And yet, how much more poignant now as we're practicing social distancing to imagine what that is, that touch. So many of us are missing that sense of touch right now. And to be willing, as Jesus, the rabbi, the master, was willing, the teacher, to wash one another's feet. So may we be willing to serve one another, not to be ashamed of one another's humanness, but to actually be the servant to wash feet. And of course, as we think about this part of the story, we think especially about the NHS workers and the care workers who are doing very similar things, who are serving in the way that Jesus taught. And so there are great acts of love happening in the world right now, and we remember those acts of love and we honor them. They didn't just happen 2,000 years ago, the washing of the feet. It happens now, and it is a profound act of love. At the end of this, Jesus said to them, this again from the Gospel of John, "Let me give you a new command. Love one another. In the same way I loved you, you love one another. This is how everyone will recognize that you are my disciples, when they see the love that you have for each other." I invite you to reflect on what love might look like for you, because that command is not just something that's 2,000 years ago. It's as if, and perhaps he is, speaking to us. What does it mean to love one another? How can we love one another better? I'd like to have a little time of prayer now, and I'm going to use a prayer by Chip Rausch, a friend and colleague, the Reverend Chip Rausch, which was written a few days ago, about a week ago. And this is thinking through all the people. And as we do, I invite you in your hearts to think of love with all of these people, even the ones who maybe you might struggle to love. Which Chip raises up so many different situations going on across the world today. And of course, we think about this joins us across the world of many different faiths, certainly not just Christian and Buddhist and Hindu. And we're all learning to love one another at this amazing, difficult time. So I'd like to lift up this prayer by Chip Rausch. For those struggling to live under the restrictions due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we see you. For those who are frankly enjoying their time apart, we see you. For those appreciating the solitude, relishing the opportunity to read, to tidy up, to finish those long-running side projects, for those blissfully engaged in the soil of their garden, we see you. For those who miss their loved ones, we see you. For those who are enjoying more time with some of their loved ones, we see you. For those who crave just a little time away from some of their loved ones, we see you. For those who are bored stiff, we see you. For those taking many more walks than usual, we see you. For those who are discovering a deeper self now that there is less busyness and distraction, we see you. For those already accustomed to quarantine or isolation or extensive medical precautions because of pre-existing conditions, we see you. For those who cannot celebrate a religious holiday in the way you usually do, those who have postponed a wedding, a graduation, or a memorial service, we see you. For those who are working even harder for even longer hours, we see and thank you. For medical personnel, certainly, I think of you in the line of danger, giving so much love. And for all the grocery staff, maintenance workers, postal carriers, drive-through food deliverers, bank tellers, trash collectors, and many others, we see you. For those who own a small business who are wondering how they can sustain it, we see you. For those attempting to feed, comfort, wrangle, and perhaps even educate children, we see you. For those already shunned or microaggressed because they appear to have Asian ancestry, we see you. For those saddened or enraged at how, again, Black and brown communities are disproportionately harmed through human inaction and deliberate mishandling of this crisis, we see you. For those attempting to profit from the situation, and for those seeking to increase or consolidate their own power, we see you too. For those who have never had more than a few days' worth of food in their house, for those watching the food pantry shelves get emptier and emptier, we see you. For those who are now quarantined in a small space with their abuser, we see you. For those imprisoned or detained, and for all those who love you, we see you. For those who have already thought they knew somebody with the virus and that near miss was frightening enough, for those who do know someone with the virus, we see you. For those who have been diagnosed with the virus, we see you and we send support and love. For those who have already lost a loved one to this pandemic, we see you and grieve with you. For those who just want a hug from somebody, we see you and we send you a regrettably unsatisfying virtual hug with a promise for a real one someday. For those of us who are part of the interconnected web of all existence, may we draw strength from these connections. May we furnish resilience to the connections around us. May we truly feel the spirit of life evolving through and amongst us. So may we be. I invite us from the Christian tradition to teach the prayer that Jesus taught earlier in his ministry, the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. So, we see that this is not just a story that happened a long time ago, but we relive it. In fact, every Lent and every Easter, we relive it here. Getting to the hardest part of the story now. Jesus went to the garden after that, and he was arrested, and he was taken away. And then he was ridiculed by the soldiers who were just following orders, ridiculed as the king of the Jews, which is what they said he called himself. And he was placed on the hill and he was killed there on the cross. And it must have been a time when they lost all hope. They crucified him, and with two others on each side, Jesus in the middle. Pilate wrote a sign and had it placed on the cross. It read, Jesus the Nazarene, the King of the Jews. Jesus, seeing everything had been completed so that scripture record might also be complete, then said, I'm thirsty. A jug of sour wine was standing by. Someone put a sponge soaked with the wine on a javelin and lifted it to his mouth. After he took the wine, Jesus said, it's done, complete. Bowing his head, he offered up his spirit. So that is the hardest part of the story, the part of absence, when there's nothing that can be said. I'm going to have a moment of silence in a minute, but first I'd like to have a reading from the more modern tradition, which is letters from our better angels. No, let's have the silence first and then this reading. Let's go into this. Sometimes there's nothing that can be said and things are just hard. We'll say things later. But let's take a moment just to gather our thoughts. It's been such a hard time. Sometimes we need to delve into that difficulty, that challenge. And sometimes in the silence, hope comes. Maybe it takes a little longer. But let's take a moment just to hold both that sense of despair, but also the love that we spoke about. Just hold it together, whatever's coming up for you in your heart. I invite you to just make yourself in a comfortable position and just be aware of your feelings, that love, that sorrow, that grief, that hope, whatever's on your heart. Let's take a minute to simply let be and be in that moment and be with the Spirit of life, be with God. Let's take a moment in silence. We pray that peace might be with us all, especially those who are suffering, those who are waiting to heal. We pray that they may get strength and endurance and vitality and heal. For those that mourn, we pray that they may be comforted, that they may be blessed, even in the midst of their mourning, and that a sense of presence may visit them. Kindness and mercy may visit them, even as they go through this such difficult time. We pray for the children, that they may know joy and happiness, that they may seek and find the love that surrounds them in this life. We pray that for all children, including those of us who are a little bit older, that we may know joy, that we may know happiness, that we may know resurrection. Lord, hear our prayer. Amen. This is called Letter from Our Better Angels by Sean Parker Dennison. Imagine writing your better angels. What would your better angels write back from you? I think of this now. I find when, now that this self-isolation has been going on, I get a little bit more touchy. I get a little bit more frustrated. I need to forgive myself and also forgive others. And just, I need my better angels now more than ever. So this is Letter from Our Better Angels by Sean Parker Dennison. Dear one, we have received your letter, and we hate to tell you, not hate so much, but are a bit afraid to say we cannot grant your requests as stated, but can only remind you of familiar things. First, faith. Faith in yourself and trust in others. We know it can be terrifying to be vulnerable, but only when you share your softest side will we be able to break through. Next, hope. Hope is not an empty fairy tale. It is the true story of all the times human beings like you have found a way to create the future, though you didn't know how. And, of course, love. Love that demands you cherish all people, not just yourself and safety. Love that is not satisfied until every argument ends abruptly when one child says, "That hurts." There is so much to learn and relearn. The world teaches you to be hard, to negotiate and defend, to avoid giving too much and to the wrong people. There are no wrong people. You also are not wrong. You also are not wrong. And when you encounter the poor, the broken, the unhoused and unwelcome, you are looking, if you pay attention, at us, calling you to answer your own prayers. If you want to change the world, first, be sure you are changing yourself. Be tender. Be kind. Be at peace. Be all the things you wish for. Be your own better self. It isn't without cost, but it will be free. Letter from Our Better Angels by Sean Parker Dennison. So we come now to the end of our story, for it doesn't end there in that place of despair and the cross. No, the story goes quite a ways from there. And it goes early in the morning on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone was moved away from the entrance. She ran at once to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved. Breathlessly panting, they took the master from the tomb. We don't know where they put him. So they opened up the tomb and they found nothing there. Now, in our particular tomb, or mystery, an Easter egg, which before Christian times was a symbol of the mystery of life and the abundance of life. Because there is always life springing forth in the world. But something happened there amongst the disciples in their absence, in their grief. Something happened, and they found life where they least expected it. At the moment of their most profound heartbreak, they found an abundant life. And Jesus came, and Jesus ate with them and talked to them. Jesus came to Mary Magdalene, and Mary, thinking that he was the gardener, said, "Mister, if you took him, tell me where you put him so I can care for him." Speaking of Jesus. And Jesus said, "Mary." Turning to face him, she recognized him, you see. She said in Hebrew, "Rabboni," meaning teacher. And Jesus said, "Don't cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go to my brothers and tell them I ascend to my Father and your Father, my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went telling the news to the disciples, "I saw the Master." And she told them everything he said to her. I'll have a little reflection. I know I'm running long, but we are now at Easter. So I'll take my time now. Resurrection is at the heart of the Easter message. Even death could not stop Jesus, that prophet of love, that master of kindness, that washer of feet, from returning to his disciples. Upon his capture, even before they see him on a cross, they feared he would never be with them again, and their hearts broke that he was gone forever. And his death there on the hill upon a lonely cross confirmed it. There was no cause for hope. And yet, according to the Gospels, when the women came to the tomb, they found it empty. These women, powerless women not even in Jerusalem society, on the margins of everything, total outsiders to power, were the first Christians. You might say they were the founders of Christianity. They were the first to believe in the empty tomb and the risen Jesus. In the Gospel of John, as we heard, Mary Magdalene was visited by Jesus. She sat outside the tomb weeping. She was missing her friend and teacher terribly. Many of us can relate to that. All those who mourn someone miss someone terribly and do throughout life. And also, in this time of social distancing, many of us miss being close to our families, our friends who are still here. Sometimes we can go and visit them at 6 feet, but they're tantalizingly out of reach. Mary sits there at the empty tomb, unable to touch Jesus or hear from him. She's in tears, and she's there visited by angels, and she discovers one is her teacher, Jesus. Which is all very well for Mary Magdalene, but what about us? When will we see our loved ones again? When will life be returned to normal? We may not be sitting next to an empty tomb, but there is a kind of emptiness to these long days. Some of us have long stretches of not very much to do. I've heard about a great many garden sheds that have been tidied, kitchens that have been cleaned. Now, that's just some of us. For others, it's quite the opposite. Too much to do and scarcely a moment to think or reflect. And I know our NHS and care home workers and all of those in those fields may go out for shifts of 15, 16, 22 hours to a place of great danger and great heartbreak, rushed off their feet with no time even to sit down and weep. But for all of us, we're looking for that hope, I think, and it seems a luxury. I know we can sort of see that things may get better and that they will get better, in fact. We believe that, but we know we've got a little time to come, and we wonder about how much time there is, and we're in that in-between time. And yet, it is Easter Sunday, and we proclaim Easter. Here in this little live stream with a handful of us together, but in a much larger sense throughout the world, in so many homes, in so many countries, Easter is proclaimed today. And the message of Easter in this unusual time has not really changed at all. The Easter message was never really a message of comfort and convenience. It's all very well, and we love the Easter egg hunts. I know I do, and the chocolate and the the get-togethers. But Easter is proclaimed especially to those, and extra especially by those who are going through hard times, the dispossessed, the betrayed, the heartbroken. The message of Easter, this message of resurrection, of the power of life to transcend even death, can only be fully understood if we have spent at least a little time in the valley of the shadow and learned that even there, the light finds a way in. I don't know how that light will find its way in this Easter. Not everything is written down in ways that we can read. The future is yet to be written, and yet I know that light and hope will find a way in. I enjoy my little daily walk. I don't know if you have a chance. I know not everybody does, and some of us have to walk in our imagination, but I take my daily walk sometimes with one of my children, and sometimes a couple of days it's been just me, which has been wonderful. And I've been there with my thoughts, and I've had a lot of thoughts. I'm sure you have too, rolling around and walking out there. And I almost didn't notice that spring was here again, but it's hard to miss. I mean, the birds are noisy, plants are colorful. There's just this wonderful spring all around us. And it reminds me that the world knows that it's Easter. The world knows that it's spring. Life abundant returns to the earth. And it will return again to our hearts. We just need to trust that it will. And sometimes that trust is the hardest thing. But sometimes, like Mary Magdalene, we turn around and it's there. Sometimes we just need to look. And when we look around us at the beauty around us, at the love in the world, we look at the kindness of the care home workers, we look at the love of our neighbor, we look at the beauties of spring, and we notice that it's already here. Easter is already here. We just didn't recognize it. And I don't know what happened 2,000 years ago in Galilee. Another conversation. What happened at the tomb on the outskirts of Jerusalem? But I do know this. He is risen. We are risen. In some way beyond our understanding, we are born anew, given new life. Each moment, each breath, each spring. We are risen. He is risen in our hearts. That Christ energy is inside us, is a part of us. That love is with us. And so the prayer of my heart to close this time with. Prayer of my heart, first of all, is I know we're praying to get out of this, right? And we will. And I know that we doesn't always include everyone, and that's one of these things about life, but we will in a way that carries everyone. It's a collective liberation, even if that liberation has to be held in memory and glory. But we will, most of us, get through this, and we will come back to, well, it won't be normalcy, will it? But things will start, some of the restrictions will start to ease. And when that happens, I'll be as excited as the rest of you. You know, as when we have a chance to get together, and maybe sometime, my goodness, that'll be a party. And I'll be partying out there with the rest of you. I may only party till 8 because I'm not a late night owl these days, but I'll be at that party, that feast, that celebration, that L'chaim. So I'm praying, I'm hoping for that time when we'll be together again and we'll celebrate. But I have another prayer too. And my other prayer, because I know we will get back to something like normalcy, and normalcy is not really the goal in life, because life isn't normal for very long, is it? So my prayer beyond that is that we will, as we do step out of our houses and join together in community, that we will appreciate it even more than we ever did before. I know when I get to go on my daily walk, I'm just so grateful to be out there. And I know that's not always the case. So I want to preserve that. And I know the first week I'll be super grateful when things change for the better. But I want to keep that gratitude. And my prayer is for us as a global community to realize how precious it is. How precious this world that we share is, the beauties of nature that we have been despoiling in so many ways. How precious human community is. This human community that we often are unkind or unjust, structural oppression, all the ways that we hurt one another. And that we may, I know everything's not going to immediately be perfect, but that we may start to feel something of this kingdom of heaven that Jesus spoke of. The kingdom of heaven may feel an intense zest for life, that gratitude. That isn't a denial that life is hard. Jesus was well aware of that. But a determination to live abundantly, to live to life, to pledge allegiance to life, to pledge allegiance to kindness and service. That's my prayer. The end of the Gospel of John, it says, after breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Master, you know I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. He then asked a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Master, you know I love you. Jesus said, shepherd my sheep. Then he said it a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was upset that he asked for the third time, do you love me? So he answered, Master, you know everything there is to know. You've got to know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. When we come out from this, even if we come out today from this service, but especially when we come out of this incredibly challenging time, let us remember how hard it was, but let us also remember how important love and kindness and charity, community are. It really is the stuff of life. To be there for one another, to wash each other's feet, to feed the hungry, and we're all hungry in some way. To forgive one another, to love one another. That's where life happens. Let's hold on to that. We need to do that now more than ever, but we'll always need to do that to live fully into the abundance of life and the kingdom of heaven. So we're going to have a closing hymn now. This is a more modern hymn, and I thank permission. These both very kindly allowed to be used during this time of coronavirus. This one is by the great Joyce Poley, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. I'm not going to put the lyrics up there, but the chorus goes, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. So once I sing it once, you'll get the hang of it. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. You may not know the chorus, but you may not know the verses, but now you know the chorus. It's very simple. We'll sing this together. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. When we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. When we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, and our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. When we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith. Then our heart is in a holy place. Of course, once more. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place. Love to all of you. Lots of love to all of you. Let us go out there, even if out there is in our own homes or on the web or wherever we may be. Let us go out there and love one another as Jesus taught. Forgive one another. Be as kind to one another as we can and build that beloved community. We can do it now as well as ever. Happy Easter, friends. May there be resurrection in your heart, courage in your step, consolation for those who mourn, and the zest for life, the abundance of life that we see all around us in the springtime. May it be in our hearts as well. Happy Easter. God bless you all. Peace be with you. When our heart is in a holy place. Hi, Skylar. Thank you all so much for being a part of this. It's been a wonderful experience. Love to all of you, and I hope you have a wonderful Easter day. And look forward to seeing you soon. All my best. Peace to all of you. Happy Easter. Love to you all. We'll blunt the chalice together, right? But if you do it your side, I'll do it mine. Blessed be. Happy Easter, everyone.